Radio.
احنا قاعدين في الساعه السودان احنا بنعرف حكومه ده حاجه بتاع كوربشن ولا ما بتاع كوربشن بالفعل حكومه بتاع كوربشن يعني انت تعرف حكومتنا ده يعني اول زي انسان اسود قال له هو ده جيل بنص غير ما جسمه مكرل لكن يعرفوا قال انت زول اسود قال في النهايه انت بيجي بانجور قال انا ما اسود لكن ترى اسود في النهايه كان كريم ده ماشى انت برجع ورا كان اسود بنفسه حاجه حكومه بانجور لكن من عارفين في كوربشن على سبيل المثال مستشفى جوبا التعليم الحاسه دائما ده حكومه هي يعمل ما دي منها من حكومه صينيه كبر بتاع حريه ده دي حكومه يعمل دي منها من حكومه يابانيه حتى كبار التجربه الذاكريه كبر بتاع مستشفى سابار دي كله منها من حكومه يابانيه ده بدون انه بينه في كوربشن حكومه ما عمل حاجه كده اليوم احنا بنقول دي حاجه الحكومه يعمل لنا شارع بارغازال لحد هسه ما وصل ولا في ورا شفت كده فاحنا عارفين في كوربشن في البلد دي الحكومه ما بيرودوا مستشفى جوبا ما ندعى فنقول ما تبني درين يوم كورزيشن كوربشن ما بينتهي كان ما في روح وطنيه كوربشن ما بينتهي يا اخوي كان انت ما عندك روح لبلد بتقدر البلد بتاعتك قدام.
Sounds of the Week on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Live from Juba, on air and online.
This is iRadio News.
Hello, this is iRadio News. First, here are the headlines. President Salva Kiir has appointed Tech Jock Simon Ajag as the new chairperson of the National Communication Board in a decree announced on SSBC last evening. A civil society report says more than 500 people have died by suicide across the country since January this year. And the former governor of the Bank of South Sudan, Othom Rak Ajag, has died in Cairo, Egypt, the family has confirmed. Tune in for these stories and more coming to our news bulletin with me, Wol Mapal. Now the news in detail. President Salva Kiir has appointed Tech Jock Simon Ajag as the new chairperson of the National Communication Board in a decree announced on SSBC last evening. Ajag replaces Professor John Akej, whose 5-year term has expired. According to the decree, engineer Tech Jock Simon Ajag will be deputized by John Malet Kwal and Director General of ISB, National Security Services. Other members of the board will be the Undersecretary, Ministry of Telecommunications and Postal Services, First Undersecretary, Ministry of Finance and Planning, and Undersecretary, Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. The Managing Director of Media Authority and Abram Anyang Nyok, a representative of the private sector, will also be members. Our chairperson, Professor Akej, who is also a former Vice Chancellor of the University of Juba, was appointed to the board in June 2021. A civil society report says more than 500 people have died by suicide across the country since January this year. The study conducted by the Community Empowerment for Progress Organization, SEPO, recorded 507 suicide cases between January and August 2025. Speaking to iRadio, SEPO's Executive Director, Hedmoni Akani, said the cases were tracked through police records, media reports, and field officers across the country. He noted that the report highlights the urgent need to step up psychosocial services to address the growing crisis, warning that the real figures could be higher since many cases go unreported.
Finding on cases of suicide across the country. As you are aware, SEPO have country early warning system, and one of our indicator in our early warning system is suicide. And the indicator of suicide have two patterns. One is suicide attempt and the second is suicide death that we have collected. This data may not be comprehensive because we have limited access to information through our methodology. Our methodology that informs the findings we're going to share with you is tracking police stations records on suicide across the country, tracking media reports. We also have our early warning officers that are reporting on our indicators of suicide across the country.
According to Yakani, Central Equatorial State recorded the highest number with 301 deaths. It revealed that 109 of the cases were men, including 19 youths, while 192 were women, among them 83 housewives and 53 young women. Other states that reported higher numbers were Western Equatoria, Eastern Equatoria, Western Bahar el Ghazal, Northern Bahar el Ghazal, and Lakes Estates.
Here are the outstanding findings that I would like to share with you. Within the period January to August 2025, we are able to register 507 deaths due to suicide. And out of the 507 deaths of suicide, 301 cases of death of suicide were registered in Central Equatoria State. The other 200 plus is across the country. And this tells you that Central Equatoria State is in lead of registered cases of death due to suicide. And this simply because data collection in Central Equatoria State is much more easier. Out of the 301 deaths registered due to suicide in Central Equatoria State, 109 deaths are male. 19 of them are young and youth individuals, while we have 192 deaths are women. And out of the 192 deaths of women, we have 83 are housewives, while 53 are girls and young women that died.
Yakani said economic hardship, unemployment, drug abuse among youth, early and forced marriages, and insecurity worsened by political instability are some of the key drivers of suicide in South Sudan. He urged political leaders to prioritize dialogue over violence and for government to invest in trauma healing and counseling programs. Yakani also recommended encouraging better reporting of suicide attempts to improve data collection and guide interventions.
The second state is Upper Nile State, which leads with 15%. The following states: Eastern Equatoria State, Western Equatoria State, Western Barghazal State, Northern Barghazal State, and Lakes State have risen to 10% this year. The second state is Upper Nile State, which leads with 15%. The following states: Eastern Equatoria State, Western Equatoria State, Western Barghazal State, Northern Barghazal State, and Lakes State have risen to 10% this year compared to their 7% last year. Is Jonglei State. It have dropped last year from 15%, have dropped now to 9%. So economy play a big role in results of either making citizens commit suicide or citizens avoiding suicide. Unemployment among the population, drug abuse among young people, forced and early marriages for girls, and also the insecurity across the country. Our political leadership need to know that their culture or resolving their political differences, there's a need for the country to invest on matters of trauma healing and counseling among the population. Government need to find a way of encouraging people reporting suicide attempts.
The former governor of the Bank of South Sudan, Othom Rak Ajak, has died in Cairo, Egypt, the family has confirmed. Professor Daniel Thabo, a cousin of the late Ajak, said he passed away while admitted to a hospital in Egypt, where he had been transferred for further treatment following an illness. He added that a formal medical report is still being prepared, with the family expecting the body to return to Juba on Monday for burial. Ajak briefly served as governor of the Bank of South Sudan, taking over from Cornelio Koriomayik before being succeeded by his deputy, Dier Tongor. Born in 1954 in Upper Nile State, Ajak pursued his early education locally before attending the University of Khartoum. After completing his studies, he joined the Central Bank of Sudan, where he trained his staff and steadily rose through the ranks. He was married and had 2 sons and a daughter, and was a grandfather. Colleagues at the Bank of South Sudan and citizens have joined the family in mourning the passing of the late economist, describing him as a dedicated public servant who contributed to stabilizing the country's financial system. Funeral arrangements are yet to be announced, but the family says the body will arrive in Juba on Monday. You are listening to iRadio News. The Vice Chancellor of Dr. John Grant University says his administration will meet with the student leaders to decide whether to reopen the institution for lectures without waiting for the government to supply meals. The Dr. John Grant Memorial University of Science and Technology, located in Bor, Jonglei State, has remained closed for lectures and other academic activities since the beginning of the year. According to Professor Abraham Atoich, the company previously supplying meals to the university has stopped due to unpaid arrears. Speaking to our radio from Bor Town, Professor Matoich said he plans to have his students sign an undertaking if the university reopens without meals.
And I cannot open the university without food when it is the policy of government. Unless I seek the approval from the government, if the students are able to feed themselves, I have no problem. But I've already put down program. I'm going to meet with the student leadership to see their views. Because opening the university without food, it means the university is localized. It will be a state university only. Only those in Dongle State will be the people who come to the university. Others from Torit or from Greater Bargazal, Western Equatoria, and all these things may not access coming to the university because they will not get feeding. But if they sign an undertaking that all of them are ready to come to the university and without food, I have no problem. And I cannot break the rule on my own. So that's why the university remains closed for the rest of the time for the undergraduate.
Professor Matoji also called on families and society to move away from heavily depending on government support to improve public learning institutions.
To have students in the university without feeding is the right thing. That people have been used to do things and to get things free. And people have been used to see that the government should feed everybody, which is not true. In East Africa, all the students, they feed on their own. Whether there is cafeteria inside the university or no cafeteria, they have to get their food wherever it is because the market is around. And the students are not even accommodated. If they are to be accommodated, the hostels are actually provided by the university as an income generating. They pay for them and they pay a good amount of tuition fee. Now, very small tuition fee, you impose it, people will react and say no. So the concept of doing things, the concept of the families and the concept of the society to contribute towards improvement of the government is not in our minds. That is a problem.
Elsewhere, the Director of Land and Registration at the Supreme Court is urging judges and magistrates to stay ahead by acquiring new skills to effectively handle emerging crimes. Speaking at the opening of a 3-day capacity building workshop in Juba, Justice Stephen Simon said learning is a continuous process and has no age limit. The workshop is organized by the Center for Inclusive Governance, Peace and Justice with support from Norwegian People's Aid. Justice Simon noted that the leadership of the judiciary has made it a policy to ensure that every judge receives ongoing training to deliver justice effectively. He also encouraged judges to be true land judges by demonstrating professional behavior and embracing the new era of the change, including learning English, the country's official language.
It is a policy of judiciary in the new leadership that judges have to learn until they die. There is a continuous education for judges because there are new crimes coming up and you have to know them. And you will be subjected to training every time to know them, such that you do your work properly. And it is also a policy of the new leadership of the judiciary that every judge must be trained, such that he delivers what is needed from him. These are the messages which Chief Justice wanted me to give you. Continuous learning. You are being called land judges. But if you have nothing, if you have no knowledge in your mind, then you are not a land judge, because a land judge is somebody who knows. You cannot claim to be a land judge when you have nothing in your mind.
The mayor of Bor town in Jonglei State says armed gangs attacked a residential compound belonging to traders and looted 349,000 South Sudanese pounds and $7,300. Jacob Achek told iRadio that the incident happened on Friday night and continued into Saturday morning when the gang stormed the compound.
To have students in the university without feeding is the right thing. That people have been used to do things and to get things
and the
free.
family member to the deceased Tom Gong Gong, who was murdered by South Sudanese gangs.
Apologies for the wrong clips. The mayor revealed that police have identified the suspects and are pursuing them. He said the authorities are determined to bring the culprits to justice. A check added that the final figures of the looted money and property will be confirmed by police after investigations are complete. He also noted that criminal gang activity has been on the rise in Bor town. The mayor said the state government is working with national authorities to dismantle the gangs and restore peace and security in Bor. You are listening to iRadio News, and now to the regional international stories brought to you by Prestige Miller's Company Limited. Here is my colleague Madrama James.
And vocal critics of Togo's government, Makuro Ngade, has been released according to security sources. Ngade, the sister-in-law of a long-serving leader of Nasibe, recently called for his resignation and urged the military to stand with the people in ending decades of dynastic rule. She was arrested for serious acts, including her recent public appearances inciting the military to rebellion, a police source told the AFP news agency. Local media report she was arrested by security forces at her home in the capital Lome on Wednesday. Togo has recently been gripped by deadly protests calling for Nasibe to resign and release political prisoners. Elsewhere, Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte are planning to present photographic and scientific evidence to a U.S. court to prove Mrs. Macron is a woman. Their lawyer says the French president and Mrs. Macron will present the documentation in a defamation suit they have taken against the right-wing influencer Candice Owen after she promoted her belief that Brigitte Macron was born male. Ms. Owen's lawyer have responded with a motion to dismiss the claim. Speaking to the BBC's Fame Under Fire podcast, the Macron's lawyer in the case, Tom Clare, said Ms. Macron had found the claims incredibly upsetting and they were a distraction to the French president. And finally, Israel's culture ministers threatened to ask funding for the country's National Film Awards after the sea, a story about a 12-year-old Palestinian boy, won its top award. The film, which follows a boy from the occupied West Bank who wants to travel to Tel Aviv to see the sea for the first time, won Best Film at the Pearl Awards, Israel's equivalent of the Oscars. In a statement on X, Marquez said there is no greater slap in the face of Israeli citizens than embarrassing and discharge annual Opera Awards ceremony. As winner of the Best Film category at the Opera Awards, The Sea now becomes Israel's entry to the International Film category at next year's Oscars.
That was Madrama James with the regional and international stories brought to you by Prestige Miller's Company Limited. Up next, Akile with the sports news.
Atletico Madrid manager Diego Simeone regrets clashing with Liverpool supporters at the end of their dramatic Champions League opener at Anfield, but says they were sparked by insults. After Reds captain Virgil van Dijk scored a 92nd minute winner in their 3-2 victory, Simeone reacted after he appeared to be goaded by a small number of home fans. The Argentine complained to the fourth official with a number of stewards positioned between him and the Liverpool supporters. Simeone had to be dragged away from the scene and continued his protest before he was sent off and walked off down the tunnel. Luis Enrique has championed the idea of players filling multiple roles since his arrival at Paris Saint-Germain in 2023, but their ever-growing injury list means squad flexibility has become a necessity rather than a tactical preference. Joao Neves was the latest to fall to the injury curse on Wednesday, limping off with a thigh problem during their 4-0 Champions League win over Atalanta. And finally, the UEFA Champions League rose into Thursday night with 6 compelling fixtures that continue the drama on match day. 2 standout clashes headline the evening. Manchester City host Napoli at the Etihad in a heavyweight showdown featuring Kevin De Bruyne's return to familiar turf in new colours, while Newcastle welcomed Barcelona to St James Park in a thrilling test of Premier League grit versus La Liga flair. Elsewhere, Frankfurt face Galatasaray in a clash of passionate fan bases. Club Brugge take on Monaco, and Sporting Lisbon look to assert dominance against Kairat. Copenhagen versus Leverkusen round out a night brimming with continental flavor. That's all from the world of sports, and back to you, Wol Mapal.
Thank you, Emmanuel Joseph Akile, for the sports updates. And here brings us to the end of our stories this afternoon. But first, here are the headlines once again. President Salva Kiir has appointed tech jock Simon Ajag as the new chairperson of the National Communication Board in a decree announced on SSBC last evening. A civil society report says more than 500 people have died by suicide across the country since January this year. And the former governor of the Bank of South Sudan, Othom Rak Ajag, has died in Cairo, Egypt, the family has confirmed. That is the end of iRadio News. If there is a story or an event you would like iRadio to cover or report about, please send us a text message or on +211 925 287870. It's also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on X at iRadio Juba. Like our Facebook page, iRadio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at iRadio South Sudan. You can also visit our website and listen to us online at www.iradio.org. You stay tuned for news in Arabic at 1:30 p.m. I am Wol Mapal. Thanks for listening.